Hey everyone, it's Cory McCarthy, and welcome to another live Q&A session. This one being for January 7th. I'm going to make sure the thing doesn't blast. 1 second, I got to get over here so I can see the screen. Okay, cool. So, already got people starting to speak, it looks like. Get things set up here. 4 viewers are already on. Okay, welcome to another live Q&A session. I hope you all can fucking hear me. You know, because I've had enough problems with this already before the past. So this is kind of a little bit of a different Q&A in a sense. Oh, sorry, moving something off the side here that I have laying by me. This is obviously a public Q&A. I do private Q&As every other Sunday, the off Sundays from the public Q&A for patrons, as you guys know. Today I've posted a link for those of you who are patrons at my Patreon page where you can actually join live in the chat. You can actually talk to me and people will hear you. Everyone will hear you in the chat. So I just want to let you guys know that. That's a feature I'm kind of experimenting with, but it's limited to 9 people at a time, I think. So it's first come, first serve. But anyway, that feature's over there. So if you're a Patreon, you can hop over and check that out. So that being said, I'm going to jump now into the actual Q&A. The next one, just so you guys are aware, is going to be the 21st, the next public Q&A. The 21st. The next private will be next Sunday. So let's start off here. Can I get enough B12 on a multivitamin? Well, yeah, I mean, some multivitamins have more than enough. If you look at the back of the multivitamin, the actual ingredient list, it should tell you how much B12 is in the multi. You know, some might have, usually they have over 100%. One of the multis I have is like 500 or 600%. Then I have a specialized B12 supplement that's like 16,000%. It's something ridiculous like that of cyanocobalamin. But yeah, not all of it will be absorbed. Like you might, obviously any B12 your body's not going to use, it's going to piss out. It's a water soluble vitamin. So it's harder to overdose on, but you will urinate the excess out. So you're not just going to like batch store it basically. I drink energy drinks without sugar and they typically have 5,000% or more of your daily B12 vitamin intake. Well, 500% or more. Yeah, I mean, your body will probably only absorb what it needs from that, like 100% or whatever it needs from that, and then the rest is going to be urinated out. So that should be fine. You know, let's see, moving along here. Are mock meats and tofu safe for children? I've not seen, I mean, well, the mock meats are basically, they're made of wheat gluten or they're made of soy products or they're made of pea isolate in the case of Beyond Meat products. I've not seen any evidence that any of those are bad for children. So I would, you know, from what I can tell, I'm not an expert or anything, but from what I can tell, I don't see any reason why a child couldn't eat those items. And they've done studies on infant formulas, soy-based infant formulas, meta-analysis actually. So there's 2 meta-analyses that exist that are basically looking at the results from a combination of studies that have found there's no hormonal effect in children who consume soy infant formulas. So yeah, I don't see any reason why that would be a problem. Body of evidence, unless of course your child has some kind of a, you know, an allergy of some sort to, or is taking a medication that might, for whatever reason, interact poorly with wheat or soy. I've never heard of that, but it's always a possibility, I suppose. I know people with thyroid problems need to increase their iodine intake if they're consuming soy. That much I do know. If they're consuming a lot of soy, that is, they need to increase their iodine intake. I have read that before. But otherwise, healthy people shouldn't have a problem. So if your child falls in the category of otherwise healthy, I don't see why there's an issue. Do I know any brands that sell B12 for children? I mean, I don't know any that are specifically for kids. I'm sure there's some vegan multivitamins for children that would have it, but you can use the sublingual. It tastes like It tastes like a bad cherry is the best way to describe it. It's like a medicine cherry flavor by Now Foods. They have a liquid B complex that I use. It's got 16,667% B12 per serving. You just put a quarter of a teaspoon under your tongue, hold it for 30 seconds, swallow it. Simple as that. And you get a lot of B12 direct into your body, cyanocobalamin. So it's the kind they use in hospitals in severe situations where people are deficient in B12. Yeah, exactly. Somebody said bach meats are just made from vegetable and vegetable derivatives. Exactly. There's nothing that's inherently wrong with them for children that I can possibly think of. Like I said, unless there is an allergy of some kind. What chewable and non-chewable options thrown into the equation? Oh, okay, never mind. Yeah, because children might prefer candy flavored, vitamins. Charlie says Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you as well. It's already kicking off with a bang, I suppose, for some of us, I guess. Is my sex drive better on a vegan diet? Now, this is really just anecdote. So, what I'm going to tell you may not be the same for everybody, but I don't see why it would be a problem unless your diet's just really bad. But yeah, I found that my sex drive, my sexual performance, and a number of markers of sexual health improved when I went vegan. And this was years and years back, but I remember the sharp improvement because I didn't just go vegan gradually. I just went from vegetarian to vegan in one day. Like I just literally one day I was not vegan, and the next day I was vegan. It's pretty simple. Johnny D says, finally what? I bought some scissors today on your recommendation, Cory, hoping for some benefits. Thanks. Yeah, I hope you get it too. Like I've never met anybody so far personally that I've never met anybody who hasn't had benefits from scissors when they've experienced, issues from joint pains or soft tissue, hard tissue damage. And I was recommending it to friends who are full contact fighters. For me personally, I used it for bodybuilding as well. Like when I would get clicks and pains and like from just overuse, I've noticed they would just go away. And then when I'd stop the scissors, they'd kind of come back. I'm not like in my 20s, guys. So keep that in mind. On nitric oxide inducing foods or the nitrogen content of a particular food product. Okay. He's talking to somebody else. Are you going to let Jason Blaha catch these hands? I don't know what you mean about it. Is Jason Blaha calling me out or something? I don't even know if he knows about me, I've had interaction with Blaha before years and years back, like in 14 or something. In a Facebook group, Jason Blaha was part of it. And I had talked with Blaha a little bit there, but he was only part of it for a short time. And then he left, I think, because he wasn't vegan anymore. But yeah, it doesn't mean I know him that well or even knows me that well. Did I catch Dr. Greger's video on Equal Producers? No, I don't really watch a lot of Greger's videos. Not that I have a problem with Dr. Greger per se. I don't really watch a lot of YouTube, I guess. There's some channels I do watch. And yeah, I just don't always have a lot of time to watch a lot of YouTube or sit down to watch a lot of YouTube. Let's see here. Can I do a video on the dangers of red meat? It would be funny to trigger sparage, right? That's how you pronounce it, sparage. Yeah, I guess I could do a video on red meat. It's a little redundant at this point because that study came out like 4 years ago, but I think between 3 and 4 years ago, something like that, on cancer and red meat. I do cite it a lot. I cited it to Varg as well. I talked about colorectal cancer and things like that, and they're finding actually, and this is interesting actually, that the reason why there's a higher risk for colorectal cancer, for instance, from red meat, is because of, and processed meats as well, is because of the heme iron content. Actually, it's the heme iron content that seems to raise the risk. There's a correlation between that, so that might be the factor in it. There might be other factors too, but that's potentially one of the factors. That was the heme iron content. And I discussed that in my Varg response, actually. I saw the video about Ben Shapiro. Happy New Year's to you too, Rob K. I saw the video about Ben Shapiro going vegan. He wasn't necessarily going to go vegan. He said he'll look into it. His big feeling was, because he was just miseducated, or poorly educated on the topic of nutrition. He thought that you couldn't get enough like protein or what have you from a vegan diet. That was his point of contention. And when the guy in the crowd at the university who was calling it to his attention pointed out that he could, Shapiro then said, "I'll have to rethink my stance." So yeah, it's not that he's going to go vegan. In fact, I would be probably surprised if he did, because even people sometimes who realize they have that cognitive dissonance, it's a big lifestyle change for some folks, and they don't just jump right into it. They might forget about it or conveniently forget about it. So, but I do hope he considers it. I hope it's brought to his attention more often now that he's put himself out there like that with it. And this actually would be a good chance that if any of you have access to Ben Shapiro at a talk or something, bring it up again, because I think hammering the point home in a respectful and intellectual way might be the way to move him toward that. And then, of course, that'll rub off on his followers, his very large following. That Ben Shapiro went vegan. That might influence them, because a lot of people do look up to certain folks like their idols and kind of sort of acquire or take on what their idols do. Quality calories for a vegan bulk. Well, I mean, really, you're looking for calorically dense foods, but you want to kind of keep it as healthful as possible. So things like avocados, peanut butter, those are great items to include into a bulk. Bananas are pretty easy to get down as well. The thing is, the problem is in a bulk when you're trying to eat more calories, if you really want to go into a bulk, but I wouldn't advise going to an extreme bulk. Just like 10, 20% calories over your maintenance would be sufficient. But because there's only so much muscle you can gain into a point, after that point, it becomes fat. It's just going to be mostly fat gain and not muscle gain. It's not going to bring you more muscle by going higher in calories. There is definitely a cap in your calorie requirements for building muscle. So with that being said, there are a lot of foods, for instance, like beans, which are fine to eat and fine to include on a bulking diet, but understand that they're not that calorically dense. So it's going to be harder for you to eat that number of calories with less calorically dense food. So you do want to some of the more, like your avocados, like your peanut butter, and anything that would fall in sort of to that category. That's going to be easier for you to get down. Bananas are quite easy because they have a lower fiber content than, say, an apple, for instance. So you're going to be able to have more bananas in a sitting than, say, an apple without feeling like you're bloated. So I hope that helps you out. Are there any studies that show you can get too much fiber? There are studies on fiber. I don't know about too much, but the more you consume, you definitely want to drink more water. You want to flush your system. So you drink more water. That's my best advice for that. Have I looked into ketos yet? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Keto diet, I've done plenty of videos on vegan keto diet. Are you talking about like supplemental ketones? I've looked into them and I'm not interested in that for a reason, I'll tell you. Because I'm afraid, now I don't have any research to support this, but I'm afraid that if I'm exogenously taking in ketones, okay, my body might not produce ketones. Now, I don't know if that's the case. It's a logical step to think that, to make that assumption, but I'm afraid of that because there's not enough research on it. And the whole point of doing a keto diet is for your body to produce the keto bodies. You don't want to, be taking them supplementally and have your body. It's kind of like, I guess, taking testosterone, and then if you do, how do you restart your body's production of ketones? That's my only fear with supplemental ketones. I know they're becoming popular right now. I've seen them. Many brands are making them now. What do you think of stevia? Since it's 0 calorie, I like stevia and I like xylitol. The only problem with xylitol, and it's also good for your teeth too. I chew xylitol gum. The only problem with xylitol is that too much of it can give you the shits. I'm just going to be frank here. In some people are more sensitive than others, but I think it's something like over 35 grams of xylitol, I think in one sitting or even just a day, can make you run to the toilet. So that doesn't sound like fun to me. But in baking, I have done xylitol as a substitute for sugar before. So you could do it. Just be careful how much of that you eat. Stevia is a little less sweet than xylitol, I find. but you can use it as well. You can actually kind of cut in baking. You can cut some of the xylitol out and replace it with stevia. So you can maybe have like half stevia, half xylitol to make up your carb total, the number of grams you're trying to replace of sugar. That's one way to do it. And I actually use it in vegan keto baking. I'll use coconut flour as opposed to rice or wheat flour. And I'll use xylitol. I use a sweetener called Swerve, I think it's called. And I've done actually, if you search my videos for keto cookies, you'll find one of the recipes in the videos. And they're actually pretty tasty. The only warning is because xylitol is a sugar alcohol, you will find that it kind of has a weird menthol sort of, when you eat it, you get like a weird menthol blast in your mouth. I don't know how to better describe it than that. It's this cooling kind of sensation occurs when you eat xylitol foods. It's the best thing I can use to describe that. But if that doesn't bother you, that weird little kick of kind of a minty, not flavor, but feeling, xylitol is great. And xylitol gum has been shown to improve dental health as well. It doesn't replace brushing, mind you, but it's something you can do on top of brushing. What is the best way for a vegan to cut carbs to under 30 grams a day while maintaining protein requirements of 200 to 250 grams per day? That's a hell of a lot of protein requirements. Do you need that much? I mean, that's the question. You know, are you that of the size? Really, you only need vegans around 2 grams per kilogram of lean body weight, up to about a gram per pound of lean body weight is really the top end of protein you need. Now, if you're 200 to 250 pounds lean, you're substantially large to begin with right there, muscular wise. Yeah, okay. In the case of that, I would say what I usually do is I add a lot of tofu. I eat low carb tofus, like extra firm tofu. A lot of green veggies. I'll use flax seeds. Peanut butter is my meal plan. I'll have some Brazil nuts for the selenium content. I use protein powders. I actually do rely quite heavily on protein powders as a vegan keto. For instance, like I'll have it in an afternoon snack. I'll have a couple scoops, or I'll have a couple scoops post-workout as well. So anywhere between 3 to 4 scoops a day of vegan protein powder to help meet that protein total, along with the tofu, along with mock meats like there's Beyond Meat's veggie strips, chicken strips. They're fake chicken strips. They have a pretty high protein total but low carb total. And bear in mind, when you're keto, you don't count the fiber. So what you'll do is you'll look at the nutritional label, and if something says 15 grams of carbohydrates, you might be thinking, fuck, I can't include this. 15 grams is going to put me toward my total. No, look at the fiber content. The fiber content might be 10 grams. And then you really only have 5 grams of non-fiber carbs to have to worry about. So subtract the fiber content in grams or or whatever from the total content of the carbohydrates. And they'll usually list it in order. So it'll be like total carbohydrates, fibers, sugars, and then, you know, just subtract out the fiber. So that's really how you do it. That's how I've done it for vegan keto. And I use a lot of, I sometimes include avocados because they're high fiber, low carb. And I'll use a bit of cooking oil, like coconut oil, usually. And I'll have MCT oils as well. But I don't cook with MCT oils, just making sure you're aware of that. So beans aren't useful for bulking. What the fuck? No. Beans are fine for bulking. What I'm trying to say to you is that if you rely on a lot of low-calorie foods that aren't that calorically dense, you're going to find you're going to have to cram down more capacity. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, in other words, do you find it easier to eat 3 bananas or 3 big-ass apples? Okay? I don't know about you, but for me at least, trying to jam down 3 apples is a lot harder than jamming down 3 bananas. Okay? The fiber content makes it makes a big difference because you feel like more bulk is in your stomach. It's harder to get those calories in if you're relying on a lot of bulky, low caloric foods. That's why I'm saying that if you're going to bulk, there are some foods that you might want to include a little more of, or at least make an appearance in your diet, because it's just easier to get those calories in that you might need. Without going wildly overboard either. But things like peanut butter, avocados, those are great examples. Chocolate can be a good example too. You can find vegan dark chocolates, and it's good for your health as well. Your heart health as well. You can throw in some vegan dark chocolate as well. You don't go overboard on it, but you can throw some in. It's very calorically dense. These are examples of foods that you can throw into that. Bananas are good too because they're just easy to eat, unless you just hate bananas. Yeah, that's my advice for that. So no, beans aren't unuseful. They're not, they have a use, but you're going to find that you're going to get stuffed if you're eating that many fucking beans. What are my thoughts on oils? I use them, but I use them sparingly. Use them if you have to, or use them if you just want a little oil taste, but don't rely on them. You can get fat from other sources, like, for instance, coconuts. You can get fat from avocados. You get fat from peanuts and peanut butters and other seeds and nut butters and things like that. You don't need to be using oils unless you want to, or you really just have to. Like, for instance, if you tapped out your carbohydrate total and you want to have a little extra fat, have a tablespoon of oil. I hate to use the word moderation, but just don't go overboard with it. Enjoy some oils now and then, but don't go overboard with it. It is just pure fat, and it doesn't have any other real nutrient properties to it. So you're not getting a lot of vitamins and minerals and other things from oil intake as you would be from whole foods. Cory, are you in the crypto space yet? Well, I have, as you can see, a Bitcoin wallet down in the description. I also have a Bitcoin Cash wallet and a Ethereum wallet available for people who want to throw donations that direction as well. But I'm not really heavily involved in the crypto space. No, I'm wary actually of the crypto space. But no, I'm not like incredibly involved in it. And there are a lot of big investors too that are kind of fearful, or they're wary is a better word, not fearful. Fearful would mean that they're involved in it and they're afraid of losing everything. But there are a lot of investors who don't think it's a good idea to invest in cryptocurrency. For everyone who's banking in big on it, there's also a lot of risk involved. I mean, inherently, but there's a lot of risk involved. They could crash massively at any time. I've heard stories of people who took out mortgages on their house, dumped in money into Bitcoin, for instance. They were actually they were behind the curve. Sorry, is the word I'm looking for. They dumped in money when it was already high in value, and then it dropped in value, and they lost something like $45,000 or some shit. It's saying that's pretty bad, but that's what I'm talking about. That's on home gyms. There's nothing wrong with home gyms. I think I would adjustable dumbbell set I have now, or buy some dumbbells or whatever, just something really basic. A pull-up bar, dip space, that sort of thing. I mean, that would be fine for me. I don't even use a lot of the machines and cables in the gym, to be honest. It looks like Google's cutting in and out right now. Sorry, guys. Let's see here. I hope you guys can hear me, because Google's just doing this fucking thing where it's cutting in and out. Oh, there we go. I'm back again. Sorry about that. There's some kind of glitch going on. Do you think there's any evidence that the recommendation for D3 should be upped? Supposedly the mathematical equation was wrong and we need more. I don't really have any thoughts on that, because I don't know what I don't know about this debate that's going on about this, to be honest. I haven't heard anything about it. I take around I supplement with a vegan D3 that's lichen based. I get something like 5,000 grams, or no, 5,000 IU a day or something like that. But keep in mind, it's winter here. I'm not outdoors a whole hell of a lot, and I'm very pale as it is. I'm not getting a lot of sunlight, in my opinion. So to be safe, I do during the winter months tend to supplement with more D3. But 5,000 IU, I haven't had blood work show if there's any problems with that. So, but that's for me. I mean, you might need less, you might need more, you might get enough from the sun. I don't know. My best advice is, before you go supplementing with fat soluble vitamins, you probably want to get some blood work done to begin with. Or if you're feeling signs, one of the signs of vitamin D deficiency really is low sex drive, because it can lower testosterone. Lower vitamin D3 can lower testosterone. Now, taking D3 doesn't necessarily boost testosterone, but it can optimize it. So if you have low levels of D3, it's kind of like with zinc. zinc itself doesn't boost testosterone, but if you're deficient in zinc, you can have lower testosterone because of that. So if you take zinc, and the same with D3, it can optimize your levels back to a healthful range. It can restore them, is the word. So that's my thoughts on that. Is there a safe way to be on steroids? Not that I want to. I'm just curious to see if all these athletes on low-dose steroids seem to be healthy long-term. I wouldn't risk it myself. I'm sure that if you have a doctor monitoring you, you probably could do it. I'm not an expert on steroids, so people ask me steroid questions. I don't really know what to say besides what I've seen in the research. I don't have any experience with them. I know people who take them, but I don't ask them a lot of questions because I don't really care about the steroid. It's not an interest of mine to take them, so I don't ask them like, "Oh, are your balls falling off? Have you shut down?" I don't ask these kinds of questions. It's just not an interest of mine. I mean, I've read the research, and that's really better than anecdote in my opinion. So yeah, I'm sure you could do it as healthfully as possible. That's probably the best way to say it. I don't think it's helpful to take them unless you are deficient. Like, for instance, if you need TRT for medical reasons, great, take them then. You'll be taking testosterone then. Not like they're not going to, prescribe you Trembolone, for instance, to my knowledge. But I'm sure in other circumstances under doctor supervision. But keep in mind that would be, that might be, I don't know if that's legal for the doctor. I don't know the legalities of all this shit, but I'm sure under a doctor's supervision with their advice, you probably could do it, but you're still going to be putting yourself at potential risk of being shut down, losing your libido, losing your ability to have children, your fertility, having to live on TRT the rest of your life. Like, these are possibilities. They've done large body studies showing that men who take steroids, even low dose steroids, even for short periods of time, end up with lower testosterone afterwards and maintaining that low testosterone for years. Lower, rather, not necessarily low, but lower than what they had before going into the steroids. So it's not really worth it, in my opinion. The G in sphere is pronounced like an I, so sphere, I guess. Okay. I don't really think about sphere all that often. From what I've seen of him, he looks like a nut job. Not just because of his raw meat habit, but just in general. On this again, is there a recommended dose? One that I have is 2,500 milligrams per capsule. They recommend 3 per day, 20% ketosterones. I don't even think I take that much. I take literally, I have to look at it again. I think it's like 800 milligrams per quarter teaspoon. And I'll take like a half teaspoon a day before bed. I'll have to look at the dosage again, but I think it's around 800 per quarter. So I guess I'm getting about 1,600 milligrams a day pre-bed. That's off the top of my head. Oh, okay. So he's a Swede, and yeah, obviously, sphere is a Swede, I suppose. So I guess you'd know how it's pronounced. Have you checked out the latest MyProtein vegan products? They're made of natural vegan pre-workout B12, D3, and EPA DHA. That's pretty cool. The EPA DHA thing is pretty cool. I like that. I mean, the more companies, there's a market for it now. Veganism is gaining a lot of mainstream attention. There's a market for it. And I showed up in the stream crash. It says Jay. Jay, you're one of my patrons. If you want to jump over, there's a link on the patron page right now. That if you want to jump in as voice, I mean, I'm trying to test this shit out. It's really testing the waters here. You can jump in as voice and talk live if you have a Google account. That is, but they're pretty easy to set up if you don't. How long do you think it would be before being vegan is a standard and people who eat meat are seen as barbarians? I'm afraid that'll never happen, to be honest. I mean, the social stigma might grow and grow and grow toward people who eat meat as being primitive or what have you, but I'm afraid that, at least in my lifetime, I'll never see that. I don't know if that, never say never, I guess, but there are a lot of people out there who just refuse to give up meat, and there's no law saying they'd have to be vegan. And, so I don't know if I'll ever see a world that's vegan. Definitely not in my lifetime, but I don't know theoretically, if we'll ever, as a collective species, see a world that is vegan. But I guess never say never. Um, did I ever come across about a study about veganism and hair regrowth? Not that I've seen. I mean, that's really a genetic thing too, and higher DHT levels, or rather a sensitivity to DHT, can cause baldness. It also can grow bigger beards. People who tend to have like really big beards can also tend toward the genetic side of being bald, from what I understand, or balding rather. So there's a trade-off there, because it's really about DHT in both of those cases. But I don't know if there's anything with the vegan diet specifically that might lower DHT and perhaps stunt the hair loss situation, or what to that. I know creatine consumption, and there's a lot of creatine in meat, and but creatine consumption, high creatine consumption, can raise DHT to a degree. So yeah, there's something to think about. So potentially meat could influence male pattern baldness if there's a genetic predisposition to such a thing. Exercises for huge delts. I've done a video about this, but one of my favorite is the upright row. Now, a lot of people complain that the upright row could cause shoulder impingement and that as well. Apparently, a wider grip, even going as far as a snatch grip on the upright row, it actually activates more delt and more traps. But you can actually activate sufficient medial and rear deltoid with the upright row just by going up to about your sternum. You don't need to bring it up to your freaking neck. So the upright row is a great exercise, a compound exercise for the deltoids, the trapezius, rhomboids to a degree as well. They're all involved in that. There's a little anterior delt, but mostly it's posterior and lateral deltoids that are activated by the upright row. Beyond that, lateral raises, overhead presses, but keep in mind that overhead pressing is going to be more anterior deltoid than anything else. Maybe a little bit of lateral deltoid, very, very little posterior. You'll get more lateral deltoid involvement with dumbbells, it appears, in overhead presses, standing, that is. So I would really say throw in some overhead pressing simply for sheer strength and to improve that pressing power. But then also throw raises, bent over laterals, face pulls, cable scarecrows, things like that are all very great exercises to include for in general. And if you really want that hard cap, bear in mind, if you're bench pressing, you're already getting a lot of anterior deltoid as it is, just from bench pressing. So really, if you want that cap, focus on things like, your laterals, or things like your scarecrows, on things like your face pulls. Those will really help, work on those lateral and rear delts to make it pop more. Your deltoids pop more from the side. And keep in mind, it's very genetic. How big your deltoids will look is just very genetic. And also, but the thinner, the leaner your waistline is, obviously, the bigger your deltoids will look too. When you look at the body as a whole. So there's a degree of illusion involved also. So that's my tips for that. Let's see here. Xylitol is really horrible smelling fart. Smelling farts. Onions can cause horrible smelling farts. I know that I've had, I know it's TMI, but I've had some bad smelling gas from onions. Some rancid tar smelling gas that could clear a train. TMI, I'm sure. Let's see here. You know anything about the links between biotin causing acne and the theory of why pantothenic acid cures acne because it competes for the same enzymes as biotin? I don't know anything about that. I don't really know a lot about acne or the causes of acne and things like that. It's not really a subject I've looked too heavily into. I know a lot about a lot of things, I guess, or a little about a lot of things, I guess, but there's a hell of a lot out there I don't know about because I just never read about it or spent much time reading about it, or I just have very limited knowledge on it. So keep that in mind. But I'm always reading, so I'll always look into something and learn something new. I mean, that's what we should all be doing. We should all be trying to expand our knowledge. Make us more mentally formidable individuals. The EPA DHA is great in my opinion. The dosage is not as high as Source Naturals, but they're cheaper, at least in Italy. I use Source Natural brand myself. Actually, it's it's a little on the pricey side, but $20, $22 US can get you about a month's supply, and that's at 2 caps a day. So I use that on top of flax seeds, and it has the perfect dose of EPA DHA from algae source. So yeah. Yeah, in 50 years, it's true that we could be growing more alternative sources to meat for folks. That's very true. Especially if we make it more affordable than meat. It might be an incentive for some folks who might not otherwise go vegan. Cory, I don't know if you have been answering about it before, but what do you think of Q10? I mean, coenzyme Q10. There is a lot of, I haven't done a lot of research on Q10 myself, but there's a lot of anti-aging research on Q10, heart health research on Q10. And there's a new, God, I don't know if it's Q10 actually, so I might not want to bring this up. This might be quercetin instead. Actually, I think it might be quercetin, not Q10. There's some animal study that came out recently on a very bioactive form of quercetin that apparently can help improve the amount of muscle growth that you accrue from weight training. But bear in mind, it's only an animal study, so it might not be conclusive. It might not even work in humans. But it does appear to be working in a few different animal trials. And it's a bioactive form of quercetin. I just can't think of what it's fucking called right now. That's not CoQ10. It's a different subject altogether. But there is some longevity research in Q10, and there's some heart health research in Q10. So it might be worth looking into if you want to age in a better manner, perhaps help your heart health. Going vegan helps your heart health too. So anybody who's watching this is not vegan, keep that in mind also. And people seem to age pretty damn well as vegans, probably because of the high antioxidant content, and they're more likely to take on an exercise program, which also has aging benefits to it as well. How much do I bench, bro? As I said before to you guys, my bench is my worst lift. I'd like to get it to 315 by the end of this year, if I can. Maybe I won't be able to, but I like to if I can. I'm working on trying to get my bench up. My bench is currently maxing out around 250. It's my worst of my lifts. My deadlift is my best lift. But I'm trying to improve the bench. I have very long arms that go all the way down to my fucking knees, and I'm a tall guy to begin with. So it feels like a leverage issue for me. I feel like I'm pushing through more motion than like a smaller guy, a guy who's shorter, who just has smaller, more sausage-like arms that can just bench out quickly, So I'm trying to improve my bench press for my own leverage. This is why I tell everyone, really, you're in competition with yourself, not other people. Even people who might weigh as much as you, they might be different in leverage than you. So, keep that in mind too. But, everyone's got their better lifts and everyone's got their worse lifts. And for me, bench and overhead press are my worst lifts, and deadlift is my best lift, and squat would fall after deadlift, I guess. But yeah, so yeah, about that. I hope to get up to about 315 by the end of the year. I'd like to. I don't ever think I'm going to compete, obviously, in that, but I'm doing it really for myself. Cory, I don't know if you've been answering it before, but I already said that about Q10. Okay, so moving along. What small percentage in crypto it lowers overall risk due to correlate? Yeah, put a small percentage into crypto. Yeah, that's what some folks are doing. Is they're investing a tiny bit into crypto, and like a small portion of their net worth, as opposed to a lot. Now, there's some folks that are putting in fucking loads of money into the crypto. But now the people who got into cryptocurrency like Bitcoin early, like back in 2010, 2013, and they collected a lot, they're making bank. Those guys are loaded, but they were in the head of the curve. Getting in now just seems like a really bad idea to at least Bitcoin. There are other things like Monero, Bitcoin Cash, possibly Ethereum that might be a little better off. But yeah, because there's so many altcoins now too. Did I ever think to start a podcast? I've considered it. People have told me that because of the nature of the information I deliver, I might be more suited to podcast style broadcasts as opposed to YouTube. But I've not done it. I might still do it. I might take some of my YouTube broadcasts and do them podcasts as well? I don't know. So, do you think front squats and Zercher squats would have good carryover to back squats? Front squats will have a carryover to your deadlift as far as more. Zerchers, I've never really done. I've never read a lot about. I believe that's the one right where you hold it in the arm in the elbow, the pit of your elbow, right? The barbell in the pit of your elbow. I've never tried them. I mean, any squatting variation improve your squat. Box squats can help you improve, kind of like with benching with a block or benching with safeties on, can help you improve certain range of motion in your bench press. The same thing, like rack pulls can help improve a certain range of your deadlift. And it's the same thing with various kinds of squats. Like box can help you with a range in your squatting. I know that front squats, like I said, can help you with your deadlift. I do a lot. And anyone who's in my Patreon now, because I'm doing monthly workouts for Patreon members, will see that I'm a big proponent of hip thrusts. Hip thrusts are one of the best lower body movements that I've seen. Like, they activate the glutes, the quads, the hams, probably even the calves to some degree, but at least those three are heavily activated. It's one of the best movements for the glutes. And I find that my lockout on my deadlift is actually better because of hip thrusting. My squatting is better too, but I'm really noticing the benefits in my deadlift from hip thrusting. So it's definitely a movement that I recommend for people who want to improve their lower body lifts. Like, if you want to call deadlift lower body, I mean, it hits the back as well. It arguably does hit the lats to a great degree. At least if we want to go by EMG data, it does to a great degree hit the latissimus muscles. But there's not been all of these big compound movements, be it front squats, Zercher squats, Jeffersons. These are all good moves to do. Like, they're all good moves. They're going to have some benefit to your body. Even decline benching, incline. I mean, think about it. The guys at Westside Barbell, for instance, they might flat bench, but they also decline bench. They also incline bench. They do board pressing. They do floor pressing. They do different kinds of benching. It's not just flat benching. And from what I understand with Westside, they cycle it. They'll pick out 6 lifts or something, and over a period of 6 weeks, cycle through them, test their max again. So even the big powerlifting folks don't disclude, things like a decline bench press, for instance. So it's all considered. Yeah. So I don't see why doing Zerchers would hurt you unless you do it wrong. So I do wonder how it feels to have a heavy barbell in the pit of your elbows, though. I'd imagine you might want to use some, like a towel or something that's going to fucking dig right in there. It might even, I don't know if that would help. That would hurt the biceps somehow. I don't know. I never tried it, so I don't know how it feels. I'm sure there's a way to do it to mitigate some of the discomfort of holding the weight like that. But so, Cory, I have a headset before I can do Hangouts. Otherwise, there'll be an echo. I'll pick one up this week so we can test it out next Sunday. Awesome, Jay. And yeah, I mean, now if this works out, like, I'll just keep doing this voice for patrons. I'll have the option of you jumping in on voice. So you guys can actually ask questions directly by voice, not to type it in. It's definitely a tier I'd like to open up. Your thoughts on animal testing as a vegan gray area? That is definitely something I'd like to see eliminated. The reason why the scientific community does it is because they want to see, unfortunately, they want to see what negative effects something might have before they go and ethical issues potentially surrounding human studies. So I understand why they're doing it, but I don't like the notion of it. When people aren't going to like me saying this, there's a prison population we could be testing things on as well. People who have done heinous crimes. So really pick out the ones who have done the heinous crimes, like murder, rape, child abuse, things like that. And I say test on them, but there's people who be like, oh, that's horrible. That's horrible. Well, they've done horrible things. If they have legitimately murdered people for the fun of it, or raped children or something, fucking test on them. That's my opinion. Screw them. They're lucky to still be alive, in my opinion. But then again, I hold pretty strong views when it comes to certain issues like that. But yeah, I do have issue with testing on animals, especially some of the disgusting things I've seen, especially in the cosmetics industry. I've seen rabbits with burned skin, all sorts of fucking foul shit. That's just horrible, you know? And often they kill these animals. They euthanize them afterwards. So it's like torture them and then just fucking kill them. Just disgusting, in my opinion. What do I think about kasha, Slavic buckwheat? Maybe you could give it a try in your diet. I've never tried it. I don't really have an opinion on it right now. Kasha, isn't kasha a cereal? Maybe I'm thinking something's wrong. I'm thinking wrong here, but I could have sworn I've seen a cereal with the name kasha and then a little wheat symbol after it. Maybe I'm thinking of something else. I don't know. Is there a big difference between whey and plant-based protein? I just bought Vivo Life's Perform Protein. I mean, it's really going to be in texture. You can find plant-based protein powders, blends that have like the same amount of protein and amino acid composition as whey. They've done studies, for instance, on rice protein versus whey, pea protein versus whey, and soy protein versus whey, and all of them have come out equal in their recovery benefits, strength benefits, muscle building benefits. So there's really nothing wrong with the plant-based proteins. So that needs to be said. Now, where there is the difference, and this is something that comes as a shock to some folks for whatever reason, is plant-based proteins are a little earthier in flavor. Like, for instance, alfalfa inclusive proteins tend to have a very grassy flavor. I don't mind it so much. I just use a little bit of alfalfa, like 5–10% in my blend. Hemp tends to have a gritty. Rice protein is a little bit chalky. Pea protein tastes like peas. I mean, you kind of expect that, right? So going into it, it's not a big deal. If you think to yourself, oh, it's going to taste like peas. So if you like peas, it's not a problem. But yeah, I mean, what I do find, though, is chocolate and coffee flavor masks some of the earthiness really well in plant-based proteins. Like in the blend that I'm currently using that I did a video about, if you go back to my recent video titled, what the fuck was it called? New Fitness Toys, or it has a picture of me curling on the thumbnail, and it says "Feel the Burn." I talk about a new blend I'm using that I put together at True Nutrition that actually tastes really nice, and I use a coffee flavor, a cafe mocha flavor, and it just really tastes nice. Like it is naturally sweet with just the stevia and the ingredients. It doesn't have a high carb content. In fact, it's very little non-fiber carb, but it tastes like a dessert. It's actually quite nice. Now, maybe I'm a little biased there because I don't eat a lot of shitty food, but to me, it tastes like a dessert. You know, it's a nice drink. I don't mind drinking it with that coffee flavor as well. So yeah, you might find that coffee and chocolate will mask some of the earthiness of the plant-based protein powders, but no nutritional difference when it comes to protein content. Let's see here. Let's see. Tips for skinny guys like 6'6" and 180 and skinny. Eat and lift and get plenty of sleep. I call it the holy trinity of getting size. Eat. I mean, you know, eat to the point where you're not getting fat, but eat to the point where you're growing. Lift progressively, you know, throwing your heavy compounds, you know, work on some isolation work that might benefit those compound movements and benefit your overall size. To give you an example, what I mean by that is what I was talking about earlier. Hip thrusting, for instance, is a compound movement, but it could be considered also just an accessory movement, really it is, to your bigger lifts. So it will build your lower body, but it will also help improve your squat and deadlift. So when you're building a program, that's one of the things I like to take in mind is what's going to not only build my body, but also build my big lifts. That's one way. You want to make it as useful and athletically minded as possible, you know, and really go in the gym and train hard, progressively, try to improve your weight. And sleep. That's how you recover. You sleep. And of course, don't overtrain yourself. You know, there's a difference between frequency and overtraining. Frequency in the sense of making sure you work everything enough every week. So at least everything twice per week, like upper body, lower body, upper body, lower body. Although there's nothing wrong. Bro splits can work. They're okay to cycle in sometimes. I do in my programs, as you guys know from Beast Mode by Science. I do have some faces that have bro split. But I'll cycle them in, but a lot of it is high frequency. So everything's 2 to 3 times a week for the most part. But you don't want to like go overboard. For instance, you don't want to like do upper body 3 days in a row and just tax yourself out, or put in way too much volume that you can't recover from. If you're a natural, that is. You're going to have limited recovery abilities than a steroid user. But that's what my channel's really for. My channel's trying to help people who are natural do it in a way it's going to help them optimally grow, optimally get stronger without fucking their CNS up. That's really one of the things I hope for with this channel. Are sumo deadlifts easier than regular for people with tight hamstrings, or is there a general guideline? Sumos are good in general. Like, they're not necessarily competition deadlifts. I guess you can do them in competition, but a lot of people kind of smirk at it. They prefer the standard style deadlift. But sumos are great. You're going to activate more glute and hamstring with sumo. I know that some people who are taller tend to prefer sumo deadlifts. So really it has to do with leverage, I guess, to some degree, what preference they have, what mechanical preference they have. Kind of like how some folks prefer a closer grip bench to a wider grip bench, depending on their leverage. For me, I like to kind of like I guess I go just outside shoulder width for bench for me, unless I'm trying to close grip bench. But yeah, I mean, with deadlift, I guess go by mechanical leverage preference. But if you want to compete, you might have to just, get as good as you can at the standard. But yeah, there's more ham and glute involvement in a sumo deadlift. Cory, I heard a guy who started Ripple now has higher net worth than Bill Gates. Also, the cryptocurrencies look into now are Ripple, Tron, and XVG. I don't know about Tron and XVG. I have heard of Ripple. Isn't Ripple more working with the banks though? From what I understand, it's not a currency. In other words, that a lot of libertarians would like. It kind of does the opposite of what they want. From what I understand. Hip thrusts are the one exercise you don't want to watch someone do. Like, watch someone bench, it's fine, but watch someone do hip thrusts and people get weird. Funny story. There was a guy staring at me at the gym, and it was just really pissing me off, and I was doing hip thrusts. So I looked over at him, and I just stared at him as I was doing the hip thrust, and the guy fucks off. You can use it as a deterrent as well. So yes, don't stare at people when you're doing a hip thrust. Don't stare at somebody who is doing a hip thrust. It does come across as a bit perverse. I can only imagine how the women must feel when they're hip thrusting and a dude's just looking in between their legs as they're pumping up and down. I'm sure that it's more awkward for some folks than other folks. Yeah, just find a little spot in the gym away from everybody and do your hip thrusts, because you will benefit from hip thrusts. They're a great exercise. And guys, listen, surveys show, even anonymous surveys show, that women do look at a guy's butt. So if you are trying to build a more attractive physique, not just a functional physique, because it will be functional with hip thrusting. Your glutes are such a strong muscle. They're important in kicking, running, jumping, everything. Stabilizing. But women do look at a guy's butt. It's up there in the top 5. It's might be top 3 on some lists I've seen. Women do look at a guy's butt. I think one list had on top a number 1 spot. So work your hip thrusts, dudes. Work your hip thrusts. It's not only a really great movement for overall better performance, but it will improve your physique in an aesthetic way as well. Anyhow, yeah. So let's see here. What's the next question? Moving down. That's a strong statement that we should use rapists and other evil people. I don't see. It is a strong statement. I have a lot of strong feelings about a lot of matters, and that is definitely one of them. I think that these people have really just been fucking horrible people. And why test on an animal for humans? And 2, we got a fucking load of degenerate, shitty people in prison who are without a shadow of a doubt convicted murderers, mass murderers, rapists, just disgusting people who are just sitting there on tax dollars, on taxpayers' money, being fed and being housed. Why not use them for some of this research and not the animals? Just my opinion. Just like I said, it's my opinion. Let them give back to society a little bit. Am I familiar with Mike Israetel and his periodization model of increasing sets week to week? Do you, if so, do you increase volume within a mesocycle? I'm not really familiar with Israetel's work. I don't really. The volume is something that I do it more based on experience level than within a mesocycle. For instance, so I look at it like people who are beginners versus people who are intermediate versus people who are advanced, and even then, it's a personal thing. Volume is like some people, like myself, for instance, I can handle 27 and 30 total working sets. I mean, heavy working sets, max, be that a 10 rep max or an 8 rep max or a 5 rep max per session. Whereas if I start going above 30, I begin to feel the effects on my CNS and my recovery. Now, there are people who can't handle more than 20 to 24 sets. There are people who can't handle more than 16 sets. There is a personal component. And some of it I do notice from observation, at least, comes from experience. Like beginners obviously have less stamina than somebody who's been doing it for 2 years or even a year or 2 years versus somebody who's been doing it for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So I like to base the volume on experience level, really. And then from there, people can decide whether they're going to do 2 or 3 or 4 sets of something. Like in a lot of my programs, I might write 3 to 4 sets or 2 to 4 sets or whatever, and you kind of go with what feels best for you. I definitely do that with a deadlift. Like in Beast Mode by Science, for instance, I'll write, for beginners, do a set of max deadlift. For more experienced lifters, maybe do 3 sets of max deadlifts. So I do based on experience to some degree. That's what I find seems to work best, rather than doing it in a particular cycle. What is my opinion of the biohacking community? What is this people like what's that fucking guy called? I can't think of what he calls himself now. Dave Asprey or something. The executive, what does he call himself? The something executive. The bulletproof executive. I don't really have many thoughts on it. I mean, I think some of the stuff is like kind of interesting, but is it really scientifically confirmed to work? I mean, I guess you could say some of the things I advise in my channel are biohacking in nature, I suppose. When I'm telling you guys how to improve your lifespan, how to improve your aging, lower your cancer rates, improve like your performance in a particular area, like jumping higher, what have you. That in a way that's sort of like biohacking, I guess, to a degree. I mean, to my knowledge, I don't really know what maybe the core definition of biohacking is, but I suppose if you are improving your biology, your abilities as a human being, you're basically upgrading yourself as a human being. That, to me, seems like biohacking. Anyway, why is soy good for you? Well, there is evidence to show that soy can improve heart health. I mean, it's not so much that soy itself is like inherently a superfood. I hate that word, but it's that it's not necessarily bad for you either. It's a good source of protein, of calcium, of iron, and it's not going to affect your hormones poorly unless you have some kind of a condition or some kind of a genetic issue or something. And even then, even with equal producers, as I've demonstrated in my second Paul Joseph Watson video, even with equal producers, it's not that significant of an effect on hormones. It's something like 6%, as in 6, the number 6. That's not going to make you into a tranny. In other words, if you're a dude and you take that, you're not going to go tranny because of it. So soy isn't going to hurt you. Let's see here. I saw the soy boy videos those retards made, and they look way healthier than all of them. Those videos were filled with inferiority complexes. Yeah, there's a lot of these like soy boy. I don't even listen to it anymore. I mean, I've been called a soy boy. I've seen fucking Golden One was called a soy boy, and while he eats soy, it's not a primary component of his diet. He's not even vegan. But they called him a soy boy for simply not speaking against soy. It's absurd. But hey, the words soy boy rhyme, and people latch on to rhymes. They tend to remember rhymes. So, okay, I mean, it's catchy. I get it. But it's absurd from a scientific standpoint. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, it's a pseudo cereal. Buckwheat is this Slavic buckwheat called kasha. Pseudo cereal is non-grass. Will cereal contains grass? Okay. Okay. Try it with some roasted beans and onions. I never would have thought to do that. Using a cereal, well, I never would have thought to do something like that. That's because I think my Whole Foods has kasha, but it literally is sold as a cereal you pour into a bowl and top with milk. So I never would have thought to do something like that. Okay, cool. Am I a He-Man fanboy? I wouldn't say that. I mean, I watched He-Man a little bit as a kid, but I was way more into like Ghostbusters and Thundercats. In fact, I was a fucking massive Thundercats fanatic when I was like fucking 5 or 6. I had all the Thundercats toys. I had the Thundercats lair. I had the Thundercats car thing, all the villain toys, all the rare collectibles. I had it for Ghostbusters too, but I was a big ass Thundercats fan back at that time period. But that was a long, long time ago. We're talking about like late 80s, early 90s. And the Ghostbusters back then was like the real Ghostbusters or whatever they called it. Back when the Slimer television show was new too. But yeah, I was into those, and I got into the X-Men for a while. Yeah, never was a big Batman, Superman kind of fan. I do like Batman, but I never was a big fan. I like things like Predator, Terminator, those kinds of things. Big Schwarzenegger fan as a kid too. Van Damme fan, Dolph Lundgren, all those guys. So no, I wouldn't say I'm a big He-Man fan. I'm definitely not a fanboy. Don't have a problem with He-Man though. Aren't they making a He-Man movie? There's a He-Man movie coming out. A new one or something. Opinion on quitting porn? Do it. Definitely quit porn. Hey, Hench Herbivore just joined us. Hey, what's up, man? If you guys aren't familiar with Hench Herbivore, he's got a YouTube channel too, so definitely check him out. He does lifting advice for vegans, amongst other things as well. Opinion on quitting porn? Definitely quit porn. There's a website, I think it's called Your Brain on Porn, that is worth looking into. My computer's telling me it's coming to the hour mark, so I'm gonna wrap this up. But yeah, I would say short answer is quit porn. It's go out, put your energies into finding a girl, or if that's what you're into, finding a girl instead of like jerking off to chicks online. Hey, and especially watching other dudes fuck chicks online. That's really fucking behavior. What is my, this will be the last question. What is my main motivation behind lifting? Life improvement and self-improvement were the big things. I wanted to be a better when I started, I wanted to be a better martial artist. I also wanted to lose some weight. But then as the muscle grew and the strength grew, I just got really obsessed with the science behind it all. So for me, the general answer is to be a bigger, stronger, faster, more athletic, better, healthier version of myself, which is why I also don't take steroids with the lifting. So anyway, I want to thank you guys for joining in here for this Q&A. The next public Q&A is going to be on the 21st of January. But if you hop over to my Patreon page, you can join up for $2 a month, and you'll get access to the 14th and the 28th as well. And I'm going to be including a tier soon for voice-based Q&As also. So definitely check that out if you want more Q&As, if you want more perks from me, because there's also workout programs for patrons as well. Check that out. But for those of you who are looking for the public Q&As, the next one will be on January 21st, about noon Eastern U.S. time. I'll see you guys there. Thank you all for tuning in, and take care.